Welcome to the Agency Insider, the podcast that brings you insights from the brightest minds in digital marketing. I'm your host, Navneet Kaushal, and today we are thrilled to have with us Ryan Jones, a seasoned SEO expert and digital marketing strategist. Ryan started his SEO journey at just 16 years of age, which is very early, of course, and has since worked with major brands, spoken at industry conferences, and now works as a marketing manager with SEO Testing. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Ryan, you started your SEO journey, of course, at 16 through an apprenticeship. I am not wrong. And how has that early start shaped your perspective on the industry compared to those who entered later? And first of all, why would you start at 16 the journey in SEO?
Okay, so I'll answer the second question first. So I started kind of, in a way, it's still kind of like any SEO starts their journey in the fact that SEO wasn't really the sort of career path that I specifically chose. The way the school system works in the UK is you have to stay in some form of education until you're 18, whether that's college, university, that kind of thing. I was always very adamant that I didn't want to go to university. I didn't think that's not the way I learned. That's not the way I knew I wouldn't have enjoyed it. And after a conversation with my careers counsellor, we decided that an apprenticeship was probably the best route, but I still didn't have any idea of what I wanted to do in terms of my actual career. So I always knew I was good with computers. I enjoyed doing stuff on computers. So chose a marketing apprenticeship under the vision that if I didn't enjoy it, I could just leave. And ended up just falling in love with marketing. And I've been in marketing for this is my 10th year now. So I've been in it for quite a while. And then in terms of how it shaped my sort of understanding of it, I think I'm a bit biased, but I think because I've always learned by doing is I've been able to make mistakes very early on that people, maybe when you're coming out of university at sort of, I don't know, 20, 22, 23 or whatever the age is when you come out of uni, already been and done those mistakes when I was sort of 16, 17, and I've been able to learn from them. And it's put me in a good position now, being the age I am with very nearly a decade of experience now. But yeah, still loving it, still living every second.
So earlier in your career, you transitioned from SEO to web development, right?
Yeah, for a little bit, yeah.
So what prompted this shift, and how did those web development skills benefit you when you returned to SEO? And I mean, why did you return to SEO eventually?
The simple answer is I returned to SEO because I enjoyed it more than doing any web development, really. But my first apprenticeship was only an 18-month apprenticeship. With me being 16 when I started, it still meant that I had to be in some form of education until for at least another 6 months. So I picked another apprenticeship in something that would sort of complement it. And what a better thing to complement SEO than web development, I guess, learning how websites are built. I think that gave me a good advantage going forward.
Okay. So as a young professional who has achieved significant success, I mean, what advice would you give to agencies looking to nurture and retain young talent?
Invest in them. I was always given good opportunities when I was younger. I think having the advantage of working in agencies when I was the age I was sent to conferences and I was able to learn from the sort of more experienced people in the business. But yeah, if you continue to invest in your staff, I think that they'll continue to invest in you in the same way by like sort of brand loyalty and that kind of thing. I've never had a bad experience at a job as far as I can really remember. I think that's down to sort of picking the right employers, but also taking advantages of all the learning opportunities that they gave and sort of giving back when I can.
Yeah, that's very right. It's one should always, I mean, if you invest early in the employees, of course, the problem which agencies face is that people come very late and then they are not accustomed to the process of the agencies. Or when you hire young, you can actually train them better, and of course then you get more value out of them. I agree with that. Now let's talk about SEO testing. Of course, that's what we want to understand more. So how important so first of all, can you tell us more about how SEOtesting.com works and how a user can benefit from it? I mean, what is the value of it?
Yeah. So SEO testing is a testing tool. I mean, clearly sort of in the name, but we work with Google Search Console's API, which allows us to funnel all of your Google Search Console data through our system. And we have a few different test types that allow you can make a change on your site, whether it's something that's like a massive scale as kind of like a site migration, or something really simple as just to like changing the internal link structure of the site, or adding a few internal links to a new blog post that you've got.
Okay.
And the testing types allow us to monitor the data for that particular page or set of pages that you're testing on, and really show whether it's been a successful test or not. And I think the advantages come from that, because I mean, when we think about it, since SEO has been a thing, we've kind of always done some variant of SEO testing, in a sense that we'd look at some rankings and say, okay, this page isn't particularly ranking as high as we want it to be. Let's change some things, and then let's see where it ranks in sort of, I don't know, a month, 2 months, that kind of thing. But this gives us a better data-driven approach, is we can really drill down and see, okay, we added 15 internal links to this page, and we can see that the traffic to this page has gone from, I don't know, say like 150 visits per month to like 300 pages per month. So you can say that that's been 100% increase. So it just, in terms of the advantages it gives SEOs that chance to show the value of the work that they do. I think sometimes SEO can go under the radar a lot, especially when compared directly to PPC or something like that, something that they can have really measurable impact straight away. So it really allows us as SEOs to feel a bit more value, so we can go to the higher ups and say, look, we've done this and it's resulted in this. And then you can then obviously go on and look at conversion metrics and that kind of thing, but that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Okay. So I believe it's as important for the agencies as for the companies doing SEO in-house as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a fair few agency clients at SEO Testing who, whether they're doing it for their own agency or they have SEO testing accounts for clients. But yeah, for agencies as well as in-house, again, it allows us to show that value. And we can say that if it's an agency, for example, they have like an end of month report, and they can say, look, here is everything that we've done this month. We've, I don't know, built this many backlinks, we've added these internal links, or we've done a content refresh on these pages, and here are the results that it's driven.
Okay. And so just for the understanding, which part of the SEO testing works best? So of course you have access to so much data. So is it the content? Is it the internal links? Is it the title and meta changes? I mean, if somebody has to start doing SEO testing today, what should be the key areas to focus on when starting your SEO testing?
Yeah, I think I kind of wanted to refrain from giving an "it depends" answer in a podcast, but yeah, maybe the answer does have to come in a little bit here. But yeah, there are a few things that you can do straight off the bat when you start up with any SEO testing tool, whether it's SEO testing or not. But start with simpler changes. You can just see how whatever software you're using works. You can add, I don't know, just pick a blog post that may be particularly underperforming and say, like, okay, let's add some internal links in relevant places to this particular post. Or if you wanted to go a bit deeper into it, you can do a content refresh or that kind of thing. I'm not sure whether I'd necessarily advise starting with an SEO testing tool and then immediately saying, okay, let's migrate to WordPress or something like that, and picking this like big massive project right off the bat. But yeah, start small and work your way up as you understand how. Again, it depends. Whatever tool you're using, it doesn't necessarily matter. But yeah, start and get familiar with the tool that you're using, and then yeah, you can do more advanced tests as you go on.
So SEO testing when doing, should it be done page level or should it be done on an SEO level? And how long one typically should be doing an SEO test? I mean, how long should you give it for a test? Is it a day or a week or a month, or how does it?
Yeah, so you can do it across a whole site, or you can do it on a page level. It really depends on on what you're testing. We've got clients, and previously to me working for SEO testing, I was actually an SEO testing customer, and I worked for an e-commerce site. So we did a lot of split testing. We'd pick like 100 of our product landing pages, and then we'd test against another group of 100 pages that we didn't make the change on. So you can do it page by page, or you can do it across a whole site, or you can do it for a group of pages. And then in terms of the test length, we kind of recommend as sort of like a canned response, we kind of recommend 6 to 8 weeks to run a test, but you can get meaningful results in shorter times. It really depends on how much traffic the page gets or what you're testing on. If you're doing a test on a page that doesn't necessarily get that much traffic, you should probably run the test for longer so you can have more meaningful results. But if you're running a test on a site that gets, I don't know, millions of clicks, then you're going to drive meaningful data almost straight away. So you could potentially also run that test for 2 weeks and still have statistically significant results.
Okay, so it's more about SEO testing. Unless you get more click data, it's not going to help, because it's primarily powered with Google Search Console API, right?
We've primarily powered with Google Search Console. We do integrate with GA4 as well, just to give you the ability to track different kind of events and stuff. But yeah, with it being primarily click based, you can still run statistically significant tests when you're running on lower clicks, but you just need to make sure that you're running the test for a long enough period of time to generate enough clicks.
And does it work on an impression level too?
Does it work on a what level, sorry?
Impressions. So when Google Search Console gives you the impressions increasing, so does that data also comes into play here?
Yeah. All the Google Search Console data comes in. So primarily we work on clicks, but we also pull through impressions, click-through rate, average position, number of click queries, that kind of thing. So yeah, you can anything within Google Search Console's API you can test on. So I'm sure we've got clients who run tests and say, we actually just want to rank for more queries. That's what we want to do.
So on an average, how many tests run on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
I don't have that data. It's quite a lot. I can assure you that it's quite a lot. Even just the tests that we're running on a daily basis, we've got a fair few running every day. Yeah, without looking at the customer data, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Okay. So of course I asked what kind of a testing works better. So let me rephrase and try to get answer from you. So can you share an unexpected insight you have gained from a recent testing at SEO Testing?
Yeah. So one specific thing that we didn't necessarily think would have the impact that it did was, as a standard process for a good while now, we've been writing blog content, and then we've been creating YouTube content to go along with that, on and publishing to YouTube, obviously. And yeah, we kind of just had a theory that if we embedded our YouTube videos to sort of top level in the blog posts, then we'd probably see some sort of impact. People might be staying on page longer and that kind of thing. But we ran the first few tests, and we were seeing like pages double in traffic just by embedding the YouTube video. So obviously not all of our pages have doubled in traffic when we've done this kind of test. But yeah, as I did look at the data actually the other day for a LinkedIn post, but I think it was across the 40 pages or so that we've done this particular test on, or something like that. We've seen an average of a 40-something% increase in clicks to those pages. Yeah, it doesn't happen with every page. Some pages they'll still maybe even decline in traffic, and some pages will go up 200%. But yeah, averaged out, it yields a 40% increase. So that was definitely something unexpected. We weren't expecting the sort of level of results just from a very simple change as like adding a HTML snippet.
Right. So did the rankings change, or what was the traffic? I mean, you incorporate YouTube. So how where does this traffic source originated then? I mean, the increase.
My personal opinion on that particular test is, I think, and we've seen with the recent algorithm leaks that I'm sure everyone's heard about and spoken enough about by now, so I won't go into a massive amount of detail on that. But we've known for a while, and Rand Fishkin was I think the one who sort of pioneered it and championed it while he was back still doing in his SEO days. We've known that Google uses click data and on-page data for a while. We don't necessarily know what level they use it and to what extent, but I think everyone knows that on-page data has some sort of effect. And our hypothesis was, if we can keep people on the site for longer, or we can keep them, get them clicking on an extra element of the page, in this case, a YouTube video, then I think the rankings would improve, because Google might say, well, they'd be able to see, wouldn't they, that okay, this page previously it had an engagement rate metric of, I don't know, 25% or something, and now it's 60%, for example. Then that would be in line for them to give it a nice rankings boost for some particular queries. But yeah, we also see traffic coming from, when we're supplementing the YouTube content, we also see traffic coming from different particular places, or whether it's coming through videos and then people landing back on the site. But yeah, from a purely SEO and organic point of view, I think that particular increase has come from the improvement of on-page metrics.
Okay, so it's more to do with the dwell time. The more the dwell time is, the better the traffic stays. That's right.
Yeah. Dwell time. Maybe they're picking up more events on the page with them clicking a HTML element. Staying on page longer. Maybe even less of, I don't particularly use bounce rate anymore, but maybe people are bouncing less and going back to Google less with the YouTube video on there. I mean, people take in information in different ways. I personally prefer to watch video content rather than read a 20,000 word blog post or something like that. But yeah. So I think, yeah, it's been beneficial all around.
Now, let's talk about some of the, based on your experience. So what are some of the common mistakes businesses make when implementing SEO testing, and how do you think they can avoid these pitfalls?
Yeah, I think one common mistake is not running tests for long enough, and trying to analyze a test result that might not be statistically significant when it can be, especially if it's something like, I don't know, if a page, for example, only gets 10 clicks and you're trying to run a test for a week, and you're in that sort of realm of not necessarily being able to say for sure that whatever change has happened because of what you've done, or whether because we know that Google changes the algorithm so many times, even without publishing core updates. So you don't know whether it's something that's algorithmically happened, or whether it is down to what you've done on the page. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake, is not letting tests run for long enough, or maybe trying to test the wrong type of things almost. It depends on what your goals are, obviously, but if you're trying to improve traffic for a blog post, and then you suddenly test on something completely different, then yeah, when maybe content refresh is that kind of thing. And another mistake I think probably happens is not then following through with what's happened. If someone does, for example, a content refresh on a site, and then sees, or on a page even, and then sees, I don't know, a 200% increase in clicks, and they just say, okay, that's cool, and then failing to follow through with that sort of precedent that's been created. Whereas we'd look at it from a perspective of, okay, a content refresh generates good results, we can increase traffic, so let's do it across other pages that need to do it.
So does that happen? Let's say you mentioned content refresh. So I just want your take. So let's say we do a content refresh on one page and we see a jump in traffic. So I believe that it is very much possible it might not be valid for all the pages, right? So it's not that you do one test and apply on thousands of your blog posts. What is your take on that?
Yeah. It's not something that's going to be uniform across all sites, across all page types. I think if it's a business, for example, that has a lot of blog content, like ourselves, for instance, we've invested heavily on blog content since SEO testing's been around, and also since I've joined the business on the marketing side. I think content refreshes can have a lot more of an impact for sort of content-based sites, especially when the content refreshes are done right. But it might not course of action for an e-commerce site or an agency site who only has sort of services pages and that kind of thing. If it was an e-commerce site, I'd potentially be looking at maybe improving the on-page metrics or creating a better site structure and better internal linking and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a case of, for whatever site you're working on and whatever site you're testing on, it's a case of learning from your tests. And so if you see an update on one particular page type has gone well, then you should test again and again and again, and you should have an overall theory of what happens. We wouldn't necessarily make big business driven decisions on one test, but if we've got a history of running the same kind of test and the same kind of responses happening, then yeah, we might be more likely to make a decision based on that.
Okay, so in I mean, just to idea, what kind of SEO test workboard is it? Testing the content refresh? Is this the title? I mean, what makes more sense for somebody to do the test, or there is no rule for?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. It also depends on what sort of budget you have or what time you have available to do it. For example, running a content refresh might not be the best for everyone, especially if it's a new blog post. For instance, you don't want to publish a blog post and then 2 weeks later say, okay, this clearly isn't working, let's rework the entire piece. But if it was a newer piece of content, for instance, then I'd be sort of looking at internal linking, that kind of thing, or building and acquiring external backlinks from other websites, obviously, to that particular blog post. But if it's a blog post that's been sat there for a while and it's kind of stagnated from that sort of, you'll generally see an initial sort of bit of traffic when it's first been published, and then maybe it's stagnated, then maybe you can look at a content refresh for that kind of thing. But yeah, it's going to be different for every business. E-commerce sites, again, for example, I keep using the e-commerce example because that's where I've got a bit of a background in. But yeah, they might be less inclined to invest in content completely, and they might just say, look, the PLPs and the PDPs is what make us our money, so we're going to just test improvements on those, and they might test out a new build of a product landing page and that kind of thing, and that they might see an impact that way. In the same side, an agency site might test on an on-page basis, and they might be tracking a load of GA4 events of like CTAs being clicked or that kind of thing, and they might decide to test on, okay, we've got these services pages, so we're going to add a load of customer testimonials and see if that keeps people on page longer. We're going to see if that keeps people, if that allows them to have customers click more CTAs and that kind of thing.
So interesting, you brought a CTA example. So does SEO testing works on PPC landing page as well? I think it should.
Not PPC, purely because we run with obviously Google Search Console's API. Right. So we're less of a PPC testing system and more of an SEO system. That being said, with the GA4 integration, it does allow you to test on not necessarily SEO based metrics. You could have, if you've got some landing pages, for instance, that are available to be found organically, and you want to test, you can obviously create a key event in GA4 for that particular CTA being clicked, and then you can make a change to that landing page and say, okay, we can see that whatever we've done has made more people click this particular CTA. But again, yeah, it comes organically through Google Search Console's API.
Okay, so most of the SEO testing, I mean, would it happen when somebody has lost rankings, or does SEO testing works well to mitigate risk as well? Which use case is better describes?
I don't really think there's a better use case. We've got customers and clients and that kind of thing that do it for different reasons. We've got sort of big businesses who have like a standard level of traffic who are looking to make better use and get more traffic, for instance, when they've kind of stagnated. Or we have people who are making use of the reports that we've got to try and recover from an algorithm update. For example, if they've been hit by a core update, then they might be looking at some of the reports and saying, okay, that these pages have really declined, and so we need to work on these particular pages. And then we've got newer businesses who are using SEO testing as a way to find what works in their niche. But yeah, I don't necessarily think there's a better or worse use case. I think it just depends on what you're wanting to use it for, whether and what sort of stage you're at.
All right. So I believe that it's important for a company to. So do you say that it's important for a company to take bold SEO testing or bold risk, or do they not need to do that?
Yeah, again, again, I'm trying to rephrase from using it depends, but sometimes that's the only answer that you can give. But again, it really depends on the business and what your tolerance for risk is. If you're and to I suppose use an agency example, it's also going to, you might, as an agency, you might feel more comfortable taking bold risks on your own site, or if you've got test sites, for example, that you use to and say, okay, if we do something and the traffic goes to zero, it's not necessarily going to matter. So you can take more bold risks on those kind of pages if you've got test sites or your own agency site, for example, and when you're not going to be willing to do those same kind of tests on client sites, because obviously if you make a change on a client site and the traffic goes to zero, bad things happen. But yeah, it really depends. And this is why I think a canned bit of advice for people in SEO, whether you're agency side or in-house or a freelance basis, is to always have test sites that you have access to. Whether it can be anything, it can be an affiliate site that you're building on the side, or just a random blog that you just have traffic on, and then you can use those test sites to be bold and do those really risky tests. Whereas that you're not going to be willing to do that on your own site or client sites and that kind of thing, and then you can take the learnings from there and maybe scale down the tests, and then you can start implementing some stuff on client websites based on what you've learned. But yeah, it really depends on what your tolerance for risk is. Some businesses are going to be really bold and they'll say, okay, we have an idea, we're just going to test it straight away. And some are going to be a bit more risk averse, and they might not run particular tests, or they might run sort of scaled down versions of the tests.
So in the wake of recent Google updates, of course, one ended a day earlier. So how has this risk taker ability, have you seen it increased or decreased in businesses in general?
It's hard to say. I can only go off what I've particularly seen. And for me, what I've seen, I think people are doing the same things that they've always done or always tried to do. And that's kind of create content that's valuable for the user, or create content that matches search intent and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do think you are seeing less of these AI generated, or like 100% AI generated content sites, because I think enough people have seen examples now of those sites just being tanked in, whether it was spam updates or a core update or any kind of core algorithm update. But yeah, in terms of people taking more risks or less risks, I think people are more risk averse now, because they have seen maybe an increased chance of a site going to zero thanks to a core update. I think people will do what they are always going to do. I think it's hard to change people's minds in the SEO industry, and I also think that it's hard for marketers to have nice things, because we tend to ruin it for everybody else. So when content generation became like a big thing, then you saw immediately that there was these like programmatic SEO sites that were being published everywhere, or content sites that were 100% AI. And in my mind, I would see that as a big risk, especially if it was what you were using to generate an income. But yeah, I think people will do as they've always done. They will create content that's good for the user, or they should be doing that at the very least, and they'll be testing on different things.
So what I also need to check, so when there is a Google update, do you see an uptick in SEO testing? I believe so.
So our canned advice is to stay away from doing SEO tests during a core update.
Right.
Purely because if you run any sort of SEO test during an update, it's going to be really hard to say, okay, what we've done has increased page traffic by 100% or something like that. But you're not going to be able to say whether that's down to what you've done or whether that's the update working on your site. So we wouldn't necessarily say to test things during an update, but we do see a lot of tests happen post-update. What we generally tend to see is sites that lose traffic during updates and sites that gain traffic as well. It very rarely happens on a site-wide basis. It's not a case, it's generally not a case of you're losing X amount of traffic to every single one of your pages. What the more realistic scenario is that it's 1, 2, 3, a small number of big pages that have tanked. And that's where we see the uptick in SEO testing, because people find out what pages have been affected. They change certain things on that page based on what they understand the update to be about. And then they'll test to see whether that's then improve the page and bringing it back up. So we might see people doing full scale content refreshes on those pages that have been affected, or they might work on acquiring some backlinks to those pages or improving the internal linking and that kind of thing. And they're doing different things on these pages that have been affected.
Okay. Now, just follow up about the risk taking. So, do you have an example of a time when a calculated risk paid off, or any example or successful example you can share?
Yeah, I've got an example from so previous to me working at SEO testing, obviously I was an SEO testing customer. And yeah, one thing that we did is our hypothesis was that if we made a certain change to, I can't quite remember how many products we had, but we were making a change to a large number of product pages, a big proportion of product pages. And it was around the time that we'd sort of hit our sort of peak as a sort of business, in terms of we were in the sort of key sales period that we had, where we were making the most sales and that kind of thing. So it was probably a risky time to test this kind of thing anyway, but I'd say we were probably about to make a change on probably a quarter of all of our product pages. So obviously, if that was to not be effective, or if it was to result in less traffic, all of a sudden we've made a change that is going to result to less traffic to 25% of our entire product range. So a big risk to take, but luckily we saw a positive impact. Yeah, the flip side of that is we saw more traffic come into a quarter of our product pages. So yeah, that particular one paid off. But yeah, for every successful test, you're going to have one, or at least one test that doesn't quite work so well, which is why we say to test on smaller subsets of sites first. I wouldn't necessarily go gung-ho and test on 25% of your entire product range first, but we'd been testing for a while and we felt comfortable making that change based on previous tests that we'd done.
Okay, so of course, with the rise of SEO tools, how do you balance manual SEO insights with automated tools? And do you see a future where AI fully automates SEO testing?
I don't personally see a future where AI fully automates SEO testing. I see a future where AI plays a big role in the SEO testing that's done, and that can come in different ways. I could say AI having a use case for providing testing ideas, and us like, you might have an AI assistant built within a tool that says, okay, here I've looked at these pages and here are some things that I think you should test on, and then us going through and saying, okay, yeah, we can test on that, or we won't test on that. Or I suppose the flip side of it is, depending on how advanced AI does get, which I imagine is going to be very advanced, right, we might have a hypothesis ourselves and then use AI to make the change on the pages for us and that kind of thing. And then you can have different bits. You can have AI assistants in analyzing test results and that kind of thing. You can, even now, you can plug the data into ChatGPT and ask it to analyze the results of a test for you. But yeah, I do see a world where AI does have an impact. I don't think it will be 100%, but I think it will have a big helping hand.
Okay. And I mean, where do you see SEO testing evolving in, let's say, next 5 years? And what technologies or methods do you think will revolutionize the way businesses approaches SEO testing?
Well, that's a good question. I'd have to speak to the founder, I think, to have a better understanding. But at least from my personal point of view, I'd like to be at we obviously have targets where we want to be in terms of monthly recurring revenue and traffic and that kind of thing, which I won't disclose here for obvious reasons. But yeah, we have targets that we're looking to hit in terms of where we want to be. I think we'll have made substantial changes to the tool based on our own ideas that we think will improve the tool. We do implement a lot of customer feedback as well. So we have an internal Slack channel where customers can share ideas and stuff. And obviously we all have emails and stuff where people can suggest ideas. So I think the tool will be a lot more advanced. Going back to what we were just saying about AI, I have a feeling there may be more potential integrations with ChatGPT and that kind of thing as the tool evolves and gets more advanced. But yeah, in terms of where we want to be, we've got a good idea of where we want to be, and that's going to involve more different kinds of blog content, that kind of thing. We obviously want to be doing more marketing stuff in terms of different avenues. We obviously have ideas of where the tool is going to be and how many people are going to be using it, and we kind of want to evolve to be one of the key voices, if we aren't already, in terms of SEO testing and that kind of thing. And I think we're making the right strides to do that. But there's still a lot more work to do, and I'm obviously excited to be doing it.
So any exciting new updates coming with SEO testing?
Yeah, we've got a few things in the pipeline. I won't share on here purely because I'm not sure of the stuff that we've shared internally that isn't yet ready for external use. But yeah, we make updates to the tool every single month. Yeah, there's different things coming. We have different versions. We've got stuff that's in private beta now and that kind of thing. We've got stuff that's moving to being released in the next sort of couple of weeks or so, and then we've got more longer term things that we want to be doing anyway.
All right, let's talk a little bit about SEO strategies. Of course, you've been doing SEO for long. So how can one compete with big brands when it comes to the SEO?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, I think it all starts with where your content comes from. It's all well and good creating a big keyword list from Ahrefs or something like that, and so they're putting a keyword in and say, okay, now we've got 700 content ideas that we should all go and we should go and create 700 pieces of content. I don't necessarily think that works particularly well. It can work, obviously, but I think you're going to have the best success, at least when you're starting out, is by listening to customers and that kind of thing, finding out what problems they have and solving those problems first and foremost. Our example is we have a big library of Google Search Console based content. Because we're a tool that uses Google Search Console, that's naturally, we want to solve the problems that people are having with Google Search Console. So we have a library of content that ranks well about GSC and the problems that people are having, and we'll tell them how to solve it. And then at the end, we'll just stick a little call to action and say, if you're interested in obviously using Google Search Console better, then you might want to give us a try and that kind of thing. But one of our core values is to just share everything that we know, which is why we have a big library of blog content about more general SEO stuff. We have content about SEO testing. We have content about Google Search Console and content coming about Google Analytics and that kind of thing. So yeah, start by solving the problems that your customers and potential customers are having. That's first and foremost. Create content that matches search intent, all the sort of standard advice that you get. Create good content. Make sure your site's well optimized from a technical standpoint. Make sure you're acquiring relevant backlinks as like first and foremost, and then you can focus on backlinks that are like really high value, but make sure they're actually relevant to what you're writing about and that kind of thing as well. I think that has a better chance of success. And yeah, I think you can take what the big brands are doing and implement that on a smaller scale, and then as that scale grows, you can do more.
Okay, and I mean, most of it sounds like a topical authority, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we focus a lot on Google's EEAT metrics, or well, not necessarily metrics, but yeah, we try and follow their guidance when it comes to that. We show the experience that we have. We show that we're an authority, especially when it comes to like topics like Google Search Console. I think we have a good authority there already. And then we're trying to build different authorities for like GA4 based content and that kind of thing. But yeah, it really just comes down to building that topical authority, and that comes from solving problems that people have. So if you're, for example, an agency, then you might want to solve the problems that people have with existing agencies and stuff, like client communication or something like that, and then you can create content based on that. Focus on topical authority, and there's obviously ways to build that. One of the key ways is by creating good content, but you can acquire more authority through backlink acquisition and that kind of thing.
Okay, so do you believe the topical authority plays? I mean, what is your take on the importance of topical authority for small businesses as well?
Yeah, I place a high amount of importance on topical authority purely because we've seen that. I mean, to give traffic examples, when I joined SEO testing, I think we were at the stage where we were getting just over 2,000 organic visits a month, something like that.
Okay. Okay.
And now we're at the stage where we've just crossed 15,000 organic traffic a month. So we've grown. And a lot of that has come from the authority that we've built on Google Search Console. We've invested a lot in specific Google Search Console based content. We have a whole library of content. We've found now that we can write a topic on Google Search Console and start ranking on page one pretty quickly for that specific topic. There's obviously different factors that come into that. One, it's because it's a lot easier to write, or it's a lot easier to rank a piece of content for a keyword such as like how accurate is Google Search Console, for instance, than it is to rank when you're looking at a keyword as like SEO testing as a whole or something like that, or just a more general SEO topic. Yeah. So we're really focusing on topical authority ourselves, and I think that's because that's the biggest needle mover that we found. Is a lot of our traffic comes from our GSC content, so we're now trying to do the same with different specific topics.
So do you have any specific framework which you follow for the topical authority? Is there, or is it generalized?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a specific workflow or anything like that. If we identified, for example, obviously a couple of years ago, we obviously identified that we wanted to target this GSC based content. So created a list of keywords, and that comes from different areas. It comes from obviously the use of SEO tools. I'm not denying that we use SEO tools because we absolutely do. But it also comes from speaking to customers, obviously finding out what problems they have, finding out where they first started using our tool and that kind of thing, and building a whole list of keywords to target, and then clustering that list of keywords and that kind of thing, so we're not creating content that doesn't necessarily need to be created. There's not a specific framework in place, but we have vague guidelines that we follow when we want to do this type of stuff. And there's different people in the business who have different hands in that. But yeah, overall, it's making sure we cover as much of a specific topic as possible.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the search intent. I'm sure with topical authority, the search intent also plays a role. So how do you approach decoding and targeting different type of search intent?
It really, it comes down to content research and that kind of thing when we're looking at intent and that kind of thing. So we might find, for instance, that if we're writing a blog on how to solve a specific problem with Google Search Console, obviously the intent there is the user wants to find answers to the problem that they're having, and they want to be shown exactly how to fix it and that kind of thing. So that's the content that we create. We show them exactly how to fix it. We don't advertise SEO testing within that, maybe until the very end, and then say, if you're having this problem a lot, then this is how we can help you, blah, blah, blah. But we'll show them, as a first port of call, we'll show them in the article, we'll show them exactly how to fix the problem that they're having. When it comes to different type of content, for example, if someone's Googled keyword clustering, for example, it might be a mixed intent keyword. They might want to have a better idea of what keyword clustering is, or they might want to learn how to keyword cluster their own list of keywords and vice versa.
Right.
They might want a combination of it. But yeah, it comes down to research. It comes down to Googling for a start. Google the keyword that you want to rank for, see what's ranking up there already, and then creating the same type of content. And then you can add different bits to it that might help the user sort of following that process.
Okay. And so what do you think about internal linking and its importance in SEO?
Internal linking is massively important. I think it's, my personal opinion is one of the most important things you can do. I think for a lot of businesses, it might even be more important than acquiring external backlinks. And
So
yeah,
please go.
I've seen a lot of smaller sites that have had big increases in performance when they've improved the internal linking structure of their site. And that's, excuse me, simply because when Google's crawling your site, they use the internal links that are on the site as a measure of how important different topics are, how important different pages are, what you want to be known for, and that kind of thing. So when we look at our example of our GSE library, it's all interlinked. We have a big hub page where every single piece is linked, and then we link in between the different content and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things you can do is to make sure that whenever you write a new piece of content, make sure it's internally linked on other places of your site straight away, because that's going to drive some measure of authority to that piece of content straight away before you've even started looking at like external backlinks and that kind of thing. Yeah, but it's hugely important, and we have a tool now externally to SEO testing that helps people with internal linking and that kind of thing. And there's obviously other internal linking tools, whether it's like WordPress plugins and that kind of thing. But yeah, internal linking is a big one, and it should be high on the list of, I think, every business that has a website, personally.
So how do you see, how do you approach interlinking strategies for different for sites with diverse content types? So does it needs to be topical authority built, or does it need to be product to categories or product to product? How does you approach for different types?
Yeah, I think the best success you're going to have, I think, is when you internally link on stuff that's, you just need to follow relevance, right? So you might have a product page, for example, of a house mat or something, or like a carpet or things like that, which you might then choose to link out to one of your guides on how to choose the right carpet for your business and that kind of thing, or how to choose the right carpet for your home, even not business. But yeah, I think when it comes to the debate about topical authority versus like different types of internal linking methods, I always try and focus on just being good to the user, in a sense. If we have a user on our blog post about keyword clustering, and then we mention that you can use keyword clustering tools, then it's handy to then link out to a blog post that we have on what the best keyword clustering tools are and that kind of thing. And likewise, if we have a broad SEO piece and then we mention Google search, like a particular Google Search Console error code or something,
Right.
then we'll link out to that particular Google Search Console error code. So I think that you're always going to have a mix. Obviously, if you're building out content clusters and that kind of thing, the big bulk of internal links that you have will be interlinked between them, but you're always going to have examples of linking out to different content types when it's relevant for the user. So yeah, I think I would place less of an importance on making sure you're sticking to one different type of internal linking policy and just being good to the user and focusing on the experience that users are going to have on your site and that kind of thing.
Okay. So does it make sense for example, you spoke about the examples for which most of these are blog posts, but does it make sense for an e-commerce site to link from a product page to a blog post, or it's no rules for that?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense for it's again because not everyone who lands on a product page for an e-commerce site is going to be ready to buy and that kind of thing. Especially if it's these sort of higher ticket items. You're
Right.
going to have people at completely different buying stages. You might have different touch points. You might have found for your site, for instance, that someone lands on that same product page 8 to 10 times before they buy. For cheaper
Right.
products and stuff, you might find that obviously they land on a product page once and then they buy. But yeah, again, it's because people aren't going to be at the same stage as everyone else on the site. You need to be aware of what the users are going to. You need to be aware of. So yeah, linking out to product page or linking out from blog posts to product pages, vice versa, is absolutely fine.
So while we are at e-commerce SEO, I mean, let's talk a little bit about e-commerce SEO because you also have an experience in e-commerce, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So what are some of the common challenges of an e-commerce SEO?
I think one of the big challenges that people have when it comes to e-commerce sites is because again it's different. The biggest challenges that people are going to have are going to be different compared to for different site types. So when it comes to e-commerce sites, you obviously want to make sure that your site hierarchy is really nailed down and the structure of your site is good, and you want to make sure that your site, because you're going to have different tiers of content. You're going to have like your product pages are going to be maybe a bit lower in the site hierarchy and that kind of thing. So you really want to make sure and drill down and make sure that search engines can crawl every layer of your site. And I think that becomes less important in other content types. So yeah, it really depends where you are, but e-commerce sites, the biggest challenges they're going to have are internal linking, site structure as a whole. Then they'll look into different problems with like conversion rates on different product types and that kind of thing. Yeah, their problems are going to be completely different to the problems that we have, for instance, on like a more content-based site.
Right. So what's a technical SEO issue that you find is often overlooked on e-commerce websites?
Oh, that's tough. Yeah, because site hierarchy is always is a big one, but it's not necessarily overlooked because people know of the big importance. But I think people sometimes might not look at Google Search Console as much as they should in
Okay.
terms of they might not look at their indexing report, which is a massively useful tool, whether you're content based or e-commerce based. But in my opinion, especially if you're e-commerce based, because you'll be able to look at that report and pick up patterns of pages that aren't being indexed, and you might find that there's a problem with that. You might have orphan pages and that kind of thing. And yeah, speaking of orphan pages, I think that's something that's often overlooked on e-commerce sites because people are more focused on different things. But you might have, pages that you might have product pages, for instance, that end up being orphaned if you change your site structure at some point along the way and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think some of the biggest overlooked things often come down to like the little things when it comes to site structure.
Okay. Of course, you started at a SEO and now you work as a marketing manager. So my
Mhm.
question is around that. So in your experience transitioning from SEO to broader marketing roles, what skills do you think are most crucial for SEO looking to make a similar move?
Yeah, so it might be a bit different for me, for instance, because I still have one of my main focuses is still on the SEO side of things. But if you are looking to transition from purely SEO to a broader role, whether it's looking at marketing or conversion or that kind of thing, anything as a whole, I think it's important to utilize people in your network that you know who might be more advanced or have other roles for you. So when I first took the job at SEO testing, I had people that I follow on Twitter or LinkedIn who had the same job title that I then reached out to for advice. I think it's important to look at different. It's important to make sure that you're not siloing your knowledge and that kind of thing. So making sure, so for example, I have a process of whenever I start work, I'll use the first 20 minutes and just read over some new blog posts on sort of authoritative blogs that I follow and that kind of thing. And when I was an SEO manager at an e-commerce site, I was more focused on the SEO side of things, but now I'll look at blog posts about brand, I'll look at blog posts about PPC, even though we don't put a lot of budget at the minute into paid, I'll still make sure my knowledge is up there. So if our founder Nick does then email me, he might email me tomorrow and say, Ryan, when you're back after your holiday, we want to put this amount of budget into PPC. Can you do it? And it's my job to then make sure that I've got enough knowledge to go, yeah, okay, I'm confident I can do that and I can run that. And likewise, it's going to be different because for me, SEO testing is a small business. We have a really small team and we have a small marketing team, but you might be joining as the marketing manager and you might have a team of 30 people under you, for instance, if you're joining a bigger company. So leaning on them as well, you might have the role where you're their sort of line manager and that kind of thing, but it doesn't mean that you can't go to them for advice on different things. So yeah, leaning on your network is a big one. Keeping your knowledge up to speed on all the different facets of marketing that you're going to have a sort of hand in is useful. And yeah, leaning on different people for their insights is a big one too.
Okay. So we're just running short of time. I'm just going to ask a couple of more questions very quickly. So you have worked with niche manufacturing client as well, right? I mean, you were working. So how do you approach SEO for a highly specialized?
Yeah, so that's not something I've done for a good while now, but I still think there are things that are relevant in terms of if you're looking at a really niche site or that it works in an industry where search traffic isn't really like massive, and you might even think that you've hit a silo if you are working on a manufacturing client that ranks number one for everything. You might turn around and say, okay, well, my job's done, because you might look at that and say, look, we rank number one for everything, we're fine. But there's still things that you can look at, and I think a lot of that comes from on-page stuff. So if you think you're at a position where you have a lot of the brand authority and you can rank number one for anything, or you can rank top 5 for anything and that kind of thing, then you can start to look at on-page stuff that will help increase conversion rates and that kind of thing. And then expanding out into different things also is going to be useful. And yeah, for when we compare like SEO testing, for instance, who will write like broad SEO blog posts. So content is a big driver for us, but when you're working on more niche side of things, it might not be a big market for you to write a load of content and rank that number one and that kind of thing. So you might find that external link building is going to be your biggest growth driver. And if that's the thing, then you're going to want to do that. So the sort of headline, I think, for to answer that question is to find what moves the needle the most for your specific industry and your specific niche and double down on that. So for us and our business, it's content, but that won't be the case for like a manufacturing client, for instance. They might find that building external backlinks is going to drive the most growth for them. And that's the stage where they're going to want to jump into that.
Okay. Now, SEO is a constantly evolving field, of course. So how do you stay up to date with the latest trend and updates?
Yeah, I read a lot of industry blog posts. There's a lot of different blogs that I follow. I'll name drop some in like Ahrefs and SEMrush. They have good blogs. There's a few different newsletters that I follow. Aleda Solis has a good one. Yeah, there's a few. So keeping up to date with blogs and newsletters is always helpful because you can just get the headline topics and that kind of thing. Making sure you have a presence on LinkedIn, X, or Twitter, or whatever you want to call it now, because you can go to different people for advice and that kind of thing. One thing that we try and do internally, which I like to give as an example, is find a few different people who do the same sort of thing that you do, whether it's in the same niche or not. So like, for example, if you're an SEO manager for an agency, you might want to find SEO managers, agencies in different countries, or people who don't necessarily compete, kind of build out like that little internal network. And then you can ask them what's working. So for me, I might have a network of marketing managers at other SaaS tools and that kind of thing. And I might be able to message them and say, hey, what's working for you at the minute that we could potentially try, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's follow blogs. Make sure you're up to date on following influential people on Twitter and LinkedIn and that kind of thing, who they'll share good stuff. Have your own little network as well. And yeah, so I think that kind of question is always easy to answer in SEO, because for as much crap as there's put in the SEO world, there's a tremendous amount of people there who are willing to share what they know and help us as well. So making sure you're following them as well is always good.
And what has been the most surprising change in the SEO industry according to you over the last few years?
Most surprising. I don't want to get to the stage where I'm answering a question and saying nothing surprises me anymore. But no, there's always something that's surprising. I think what did surprise me in the sort of past year is the speed at which AI kind of took over, and then the speed at which AI kind of got removed from the conversation. In the sense that when sort of ChatGPT became a proper thing, you were seeing it like almost every day. When I looked on Twitter, it seems as if I was seeing a new AI writing tool being published, or like a blog that was like 2 days old, and it said, look, now we have 300 pieces of content, and now you don't have any advice shared about that anymore. You don't ever see anyone sharing advice now on, oh, you can use AI to write your content for you. And whereas now the advice is, you can use AI to assist with your writing, but you should never use AI to write your stuff for you. So yeah, I think the rise and then the fall of AI maybe helped me. Not to say that AI isn't still being talked about and isn't used and isn't useful. There's obviously still a massive number of use cases for AI, but I think the speed at which it rose and then the speed at which it fell so quickly did surprise me.
And what's the next big project you are working on that excites you the most? And how can our listeners stay in touch or updated with you?
Well, there's a few different things that I'm working on at the minute that always excite me. I'm building out our content hub on GA4. So I'm writing a lot of GA4 based topics at the minute. I'm writing a lot of SEO based content in general, and just sharing what I know, which is always exciting for me. So yeah, anyone who wants to follow me, I'm writing a lot on the SEO Testing blog, so seotesting.com/blog. But you can find me on LinkedIn and X as well.
Okay. All right. Ryan, it's been a fantastic having you on the Agency Insider Show. Before we wrap up, is there any final piece of advice you would like to share with our listeners who are working on or running digital marketing agencies?
Don't ignore testing. And whether you use SEO testing or not, you can do SEO tests using just Google Search Console and Google Analytics as well. But yeah, don't ignore the power that testing has. And that's not to advertise us at all. Is just when you're coming up with strategies, remember that you're able to implement testing as a strategy too.
Thank you for joining us today, Ryan. And to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to the Agency Insider Show for more insights from industry leaders. Until next time, this is Navneet Kaushal signing off. Thank you.